rules. So I would think that if it's a more involved issue, that they had to be hospitalized, it might be cheaper to transfer them down to Westchester Hospital, which is a prison hospital, and they do guard the people. We don't have to send our guards down to Westchester, do we?
Sometimes we do, yes. If they're in ICU and they cannot go into that special wing, we must send a guard down there. They
So-
have even been short on manpower that they wanted us to come and escort the prisoner for testing. So it's not just this, we wash our hands of it and we're good. We just have to pay the bill.
Who wrote these contracts?
They,
I'm asking people to raise their hands
What
just
you,
because of the nature of the
what you don't
conversation.
understand is that it's just like for us. If we started boarding in, we make up the rules. I don't want your bad people. I don't want your sick people. This is all, we need a service from them, so they can put in whatever rules they want.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a question, you want?
No, go ahead. No,
Kat.
go ahead.
So my concern is that rather than, putting it through a budget modification and taking it out of the general fund, that we, in the future, have, this added into when we're doing our budget, tentative budget, right? That 50,000, which I know you didn't anticipate, so.
50,000 is not even gonna come close to covering this problem you have.
So
But
why,
That was just to bring them current from what they had booked.
Correct.
There's gonna be more budget bonds for the
We had,
2-month lag, yeah.
we had prisoner housing in our budget years ago. When Mr. Fanslow was here, he removed that from our budget and he said he was gonna control it. So, I mean, that's up to you folks how you wanna handle that. That's,
well, I think what we really want to be able to do is getting the accurate numbers as they're going along. One of the reasons why, I'll let you go next, Kath, is, because as a result of that conversation, Josh lifted the overtime restriction on the 2 ATI officers to catch the backlog. So every decision has this ripple effect on the other, and at the end of the day, if 50,000 or 30,000 is a better way of allocating resources to the ATI officers and getting that backlog out, then, we want to be able to plan for that in our rollout of the next budget, quote-unquote, budget season. What was your comment, Kathy?
I just wanted to ask Josh, is there money allocated now, or how much is the money that's allocated now for the prisoner transports? Do we have a line?
Outboarding,
Right,
it's-
outboarding?
The
The past
transport.
4 or 5 years, we always used a contingent account.
Okay. Well, I don't know, I think that instead of doing it the way that you suggest, I want Hal to come here every month and tell this body what the numbers are and how much it's costing us, and then I wanna do a budget mod. I wanna be privy to it. I just don't wanna say, here's $100,000, I wanna know what's going on, 'cause
No,
we-
Kathy, I think you misunderstood me.
okay.
This is the first time that we've actually asked for the numbers coming in, like on a month-to-month basis. What I think is, whether we need to write a resolution or whatever, personally, and, whether 5 votes come or 9 votes come, I don't know. I think it's better that we use that money toward ATI and having that backlog go back out. I don't know what your view is, because you're dealing with the actual inmate population.
you get more people out of jail and we don't have to board out, I'm good. I mean, I don't know what,
Is that your preference, is that your recommendation to us?
well, yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's part of the reason why I want it done through the budget process.
There is a glitch with that, though.
Okay, that's what I need to know.
2 weeks ago, we started with the overtime. We had 17 additional interviews for pretrial release, and we had 2 individuals released the pretrial. The remaining 15, it was run past the various magistrates that we would like these people released, and they refused. So there's really nothing we can do with that. I mean, it's still a savings that we have those 2 additional people out. I mean, it works out to like $5,000 a month. But obviously, it would have been better if we could have facilitated the release of more inmates. Like I said,
My
I've got the
understanding was
judges.
that there was a backlog of 44. Is that the right number, or is that not current?
That's current, but it's up to some of these, it requires the judge's permission to allow these people to be released under pretrial supervision. Without that, we don't have carte blanche just to say, well, you meet the criteria. They met the criteria for pretrial release. However, a couple of judges gave the thumbs down and said, we're not going to allow it for whatever reason.
But we don't know, out of the 44 in this backlog, how many of them could actually go through the pretrial release is separate from the ATI, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're administering both the pretrial and the ATI programs?
That's correct.
Okay, so we don't know at the end of this process how many of those 44 are gonna,
No idea.
right?
Yeah, there's really no idea.
So that's why we need to start keeping, tabs on exactly, how many weren't released by the magistrates, the reasons why, and so on and so forth.
I
How
don't
do you-
know how much you can get involved in
Right.
questioning
Try-
a judge on
Well, I know
why
that.
they didn't.
Okay, well then we don't
I don't think
question
we
the
have that
judge,
kind of
but
authority,
Well, I
or
might,
you
but,
don't.
you know.
Maybe you do, but I don't think the rest of us do.
Are any of those judges Buddhists? Don't answer that in public. Tell me later.
regardless
Not
of
me.
that, we
We want
want
initials.
to, if we're gonna be spending 50,000 here or there, we'd rather be spending it on, in the probation department and not having them come through if they're nonviolent or whatever the criteria are. So are we all, let me just get a kind of a sense of, do we need to have this as a resolution, or is this gonna come through the budget, or are people opposed to this idea?
Well, I just want to ask the question, isn't this already being done? We're checking with each person, or with the judge, as to whether they can go through the program.
No, the question is, are we gonna, they're on an emergency overtime. What I wanna be able to find out is actually increasing the number of people as ATI or pretrial release staff, so that we don't get back into a
I
backlog.
thought we gave him that.
Basically,
We
the
gave them
17
the
people that were
overtime.
interviewed could not have been interviewed without the okay for overtime.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned before, only 2 were allowed, even though all 17 met the criteria for pretrial release, only 2 were given the okay for it.
So 15 are still
15
in.
still, but it still adds up to quite a bit of savings. So you figure 2 here, 2 there, down the road, it adds up to quite a bit of money. Even those
Could
2,
you-
like I mentioned before, it's probably like $5,000 for the month, using $80 as as a base.
So what you're suggesting is that we appropriate
next.
more money to hire more people
I
to
thought-
cover,
that we did.
What I'm trying to
The
do is
backlog?
get from a short-term emergency solution to a medium-term, longer solution, and this seemed to be one of those avenues. Kitty, you had your hand raised, then Kathy.
Yes. My question is,
Sam,
when you do
in or
this,
out?
preterm,
Pretrial.
pretrial release, first of all, I would expect that they're not at risk for running away. That's part of.
Oh, that's part of the criteria, absolutely.
Okay, now the next question is, historically, since you've been doing this for a while, and we just authorized overtime to do more of it, historically, on average, the people that you find meet the criteria, how many of them actually, by the judges, are allowed out of jail pre-trial? Or are the judges historically saying, no, I don't care that they met it, keeping them in?
There's really no set answer to that, because sometimes you think a person isn't going to be okayed by a judge, and judge says okay, and then sometimes it's a person that you think they pose absolutely no risk to the community, it's a low-level crime, and for whatever reason,
Cindy, you're after
they might have told the
Kathy.
judge something during the hearing, that they're not allowed out, so.
But there must be an average.
I'd have to
When-
get back to you with that, off the top of my head, I don't wanna give you, say, 80%, 90%.
Okay, because
But-
that's important to me if I'm going to authorize increasing that. If typically the judges say, no, I don't care, then I don't see any reason to necessarily go down that aisle.
But I can
as
tell you this,
deeply.
that because essentially we had 4 individuals doing pretrial and ATI previously, that we probably have like 20 to 30 people less a year on the program, just because there isn't enough time to interview. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's probably figure 30 people times $80 a day, or $179 at our jail. position.
Is that
Yeah,
typical
30 a year, but
2 out of
they're
17?
Kathy was
in there
next.
for a couple of months.
Sorry.
Let Cindy go.
Yeah, I mean, 30 a year for, you know, if they're in there for 6 months, I don't have a calculator right in front of me, but, it's a lot of money, it's over
But you
100,000.
said before 2 out of 17 were released.
Well, but
today,
we're just talking about
is that
2 weeks
typical?
period of time. That was just 2 weeks. We only started.
But is that typical that it's so low, 2 out of 17?
No, no, usually we have a higher release rate. And like I said, I have to get more information, but I just got back from vacation and, I haven't
You're
spoken
not
with the
supposed to take a
pretrial.
vacation.
I know, I'm sorry. I was thinking about jumping off the Grand Canyon when I was there, but.
Now, come on.
You came back.
But my wife was looking forward to that, so I didn't give her any satisfaction.
You didn't have to raise your hand for that comment.
Satisfaction.
All right,
I just.
Kathy next.
Hal, I don't know if you can answer this question, but since our summer months, usually we're down in our jail, but this summer we're up, can you contribute that to anything? I mean,
I really can't, I mean, the only thing, you know, like I've discussed in the past, we did have the reversal on the Rockefeller drug laws. So a lot of these folks now aren't going to state prison, they're now spending time with us. And it's just, it's been busy out there, and it's continuing to be busy. I mean, I don't wanna say that for some reason all the criminals are here, but it just seems like patrol's extremely busy.
But the Rockefeller drug laws weren't recent.
They
No.
were repealed.
Right,
Within the last couple of years.
2 years.
right.
So we're
Didn't
starting to
answer
see
that
the,
last
you know, if you look at the
But I
graph,
think
you
the
can
question
see the,
was, well, yeah, okay. Thank
you can see the increase.
Kathy, your question?
just wanna ask, can you ask the judges to go through these, people that are in the prison, move them through the system quicker? I mean, I know the whole, how it works, but maybe you wanna explain that, cause I know some judges try to get them in and out, I know you know that too, as fast as they can, especially if it's petty crime or whatever, but can you?
We're also jammed up with that too. I put in a request to fill 2 vacancies, last month. And, right now, just because of our staffing levels, we can't complete the pre-sentence reports on a timely basis, so we've been asking for adjournments, and, the requests for pre-sentence reports have been coming in like there's no tomorrow. Just, usually we have a lull, but that hasn't been the case, so it's like a perfect storm right now.
Now, Cora, one last comment, and maybe it was at a different meeting, but I thought we had this discussion last month, we told them to ask the
Yes.
2 girls to do overtime for the time being till we could fill that. I thought we gave them authority in Josh in next year's
fill it.
budget to fill it, to make this, no? Or was that a different meeting?
No, I was there.
Okay. Cause the overtime, the girls you said can't work overtime, they're not gonna work overtime forever. It was a short, a Band-Aid approach for the next couple of months,
To
but
move
then we
on.
authorized you to put it in the budget. And now, was that a different meeting?
Well, the overtime was because of the pretrial release. This new, I mean, this
But-
somewhat is news to me, this other issue that just
Well,
is
it's
coming
2
up.
vacancies were,
If they're getting bombarded with some
yeah,
other,
they're
We have-
they're recent, vacancies, and they're individuals that did the overflow for our pre-sentence investigation, so, right now you have large caseloads, because other probation officers are taking up the slack of the 2 individuals that left. And now we have a lot more pre-sentence reports coming in, and we have there's nobody to do them.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Jeff, I don't know if you have this for your report or because you just came back from vacation, we had talked about before you left, that you would do an org chart of all of the probation officers in the department,
Yeah.
what their caseloads are, and if you could also put how many, years they've been in that position,
Yeah.
cause that way we can at least look and see how the, cases are distributed both among pretrial, ATI, and your other officers.
Yeah,
You
I'm
have
working
enough-
on that, and I could present it to you next week, I could send each
Well,
legislature.
let's just have it
each
ready
one.
for the November meeting.
Okay,
And for the
Alan.
budget.
yeah.
Or I think it would be helpful, might be a little work to pull together, but helpful to have an opportunity cost analysis, so if we had X number of dollars spent on probation for alternatives to incarceration versus boarding out, if you look at, you know, say you had 100,000 to spend, and you put it towards probation and, alternatives to incarceration, how would that impact or reduce the boarding, as opposed to boarding, prisoners out?
That was the question we asked last month, which is what led to this conversation this month. So if you want us to actually see it as a cost-benefit analysis, you know, on a spreadsheet written out, I think.
I don't know, you
I
know.
presented an analysis when I presented the budget.
Right.
Okay,
Um,
Jean,
When they're done,
Okay.
Jean's next.
when you guys are done, I'm not in a hurry.
So, Alan, do you wanna see it in a different format? Is that what you're trying to get at?
I guess I would like to see a little more information, but I think at the end of the day, I think we have to bring the judges into this discussion, because they're gonna be the final determination whether, you know, they're gonna be open to allowing more people to enter that, you know, ATI.
I do know, this is from a previous, job I had for National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. They had what they call Judges Institutes, and they had people coming from the American Bar Association, and the judges got credit for it, what the implications were regarding custody. And so that was one way without us saying, you can't tell a judge what to do. A separate entity comes in and gives them credit, ongoing credit. And I know I was at one of those American Bar Association credit classes that you gave, right, Sam, on something else. Maybe you don't remember having spoken. But in any case, if people feel like that's an avenue to research, I don't know how you feel about that idea, Hal, if it's worth trying.
Anything's worth trying.
Okay.
You gotta keep in mind, you know, that these folks are making a decision to let this person back out of jail, and if that person does something,
It's on them, right.
it's gonna reflect on their reputation, so.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't see a lot of petty people, you know, as Jeff could tell you. We don't have a lot of people, first-time petty larceny, sitting in jail. I mean, this is not their first rodeo. And, I'm sure judges get a little nervous, you know, this is your 10th time and, you know, your 5th burglary. You know, if I put you back out on the street, what are the chances you're gonna burglarize somebody else's house again? I mean, I'm sure they take all that stuff into consideration when they're looking at these individuals.
Kitty?
But they wouldn't qualify for this.
He's talking about sometimes.
Some do.
Some
Yeah,
do, so
absolutely.
they're working
Absolutely.
on their 10th burglary and they would qualify.
Never
Which is why the
qualified.
judge isn't,
Okay.
But you
Okay.
have a situation where you have a person that has a drug issue, which is fueling their need to burglarize homes, and probation could facilitate their entry into a drug treatment program instead of having them incarcerated at the jail. Sometimes judges feel, well, you know what, there's not enough supervision, because really we don't have
Right.
officers right now.
Well, we have,
Yeah.
as far as I know, is a day drug treatment
Mhm.
program. We don't have a stay in there and clean up your act program. Okay.
okay, did you have something you
Right.
wanted to say, Jean?
I said when everybody was done.
Okay, go ahead.
We're good?
Well, I have one thing to say, but go ahead.
All right, well, getting back to my original question or comment or whatever you want to consider it, do we actually have contracts with these other county jails to board out? Are there
No.
actual contracts?
No.
Maybe we should look into that and see if we can get some of these things taken care of.
Well, just keep in mind, history has shown, when you try to put a county into a contract to include all these other things, that $85 a day price
Jumps
now
up.
becomes a whole lot more.
I understand that, but it still might be cheaper for us to do that as opposed to keeping them here.
Okay, I have a suggestion, which is that we, for next month, have just a special recessed public safety meeting just on this whole issue of the jail population and probation, because I don't wanna take the whole public safety meeting. This could run and we may still not get to a particular solution, but if we can look at like some alternatives to incarceration, I really appreciate you taking the time to get these figures to us.
To boil
Jean?
it down, I just don't understand how we can board out to another county without having a written agreement. I don't get that.
Okay.
It's called the Commission of Corrections, and it's called a substitute jail order.
Okay.
Cindy, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just, maybe at that next meeting, Jeff will present the scope of ATI.
A description of it?
Yeah, to try to determine if it's effective, you know.
And pre-trial.
What resources does Sullivan have in place? I mean, if we're gonna move toward that, I think we have to make sure that, what we're doing with those people is actually effective.
Right.
That we're not just like,
Direct
everybody's
user goes
going from one
daytime
place
to
to
the
the other.
recovery center and
I-
goes raw at night.
I can tell you right now.
They don't go day treatment, they go night.
Okay, I'm gonna ask that we wind up this jail capacity discussion, which can run and
We
run.
have babysitters in Wade, I can tell you that right now.
I'm sorry, call it?
Dutchess County is also looking to expand here in San Jose,
It's your meeting, move it along. If you want.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the next item, because we've got a lot still to cover, and it's almost our hour's done. So, when we went to the NISAC, conference, there were 5 resolutions, and, one of them is, you know, this is, I think, probably the most concession that's gonna come out of this particular administration with regards to the SAFE Act. So it has to do with the mental health part of it, and also it ended up having a burden on the county clerks, who all had to work overtime in terms of processing gun permits, and there was one other part of this resolution with regards to what law enforcement officers could carry. Where is that now?
So it was a costly implementation of
I'll move it.
right?
Okay,
Discussion,
move it second for discussion.
What are we on?
We're
Number
on
one.
the first, if this is, I mean, we're not, we're just discussing it, we're not
Oh, I'm
actually gonna.
sorry.
But we might as
Resol-
well, if people wanna vote for it.
Okay,
So
resolution.
Kathy moved it, we have a second, please?
Well, did you wanna send up a
Cindy.
resolution for, that's what I thought you were gaining for, I mean,
If we can all agree on it, there's some resolutions that
Okay.
have a lot of pros and cons.
okay.
So, Cindy seconded, any?
No, I can't. I'm just here. I might as well wait.
Thank you, Alan. So is there a discussion on this or not? Okay, so now, all in favor,
Wait,
you wanna read it?
The act is costly
I just
because
wanna
of
read
the
the line.
administrative responsibilities.
Okay, this is a recommendation from NISAC to
Us to do
the
resol-
changes in the SAFE Act. This does not mean that we're changing the SAFE Act. These are the NISAC recommendations. Okay? All in favor
And all-
of moving this to the full board for a full vote? 3. Any opposed? Jean? Okay, and is there an amendment you want to make, or you're just in general opposed to the whole idea?
I am opposed to the SAFE Act. I think it should be repealed.
Okay, thank you for making that statement. This one is more something that Dick, if you could, recognizing the importance of Marine patrols and county law enforcement. My understanding is that we have a good memorandum of understanding and funding from the National Park Service. However, as part of the sequester and the partial government shutdown, those, I think it's $75,000.
I believe that's correct.
Is now called into question. So, it says the New York State Park Police and the New York State Police have largely withdrawn from providing marine services. That's an issue for us because of the Delaware River. We tried to get through, a no, loss of life summer, which I think, some summers we do, some summers we don't.
We did okay this year.
This is, with regards to putting that money back into the state budget. Okay, so I'll call the question
So you wanna put that in the form of a resolution also?
for the, yes.
Okay.
We'll just take this resolution.
Okay, that's fine, okay.
Okay,
then I'll-
first,
We were asking the reimbursement rate to go from 50% to 75%.
to restore back to the
restore
way
it
it
the way it was.
Okay, back
The way
to
it was.
75%.
Yes.
Which is the equivalent of 75 million. Okay?
So moved by,
Moved by Kathy, seconded by Alan. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, good. All right, then the third is, oh boy, this is Ken's favorite topic. All right, here we have the 911 funds. Everybody, as everybody knows, we have a bill, our cell phone, $1.20 goes into this fund. It comes out to a total of 200 million, and every year Sullivan County gets 38,000 back. We're grateful for every penny. However, what ends up happening is that 75 million was appropriated to the 911, and that was then turned into a competitive grant, of which in rounds 1 and 2, Sullivan County were somewhere in the $2 million range. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex. So that basically what that means is that there's $125 million somewhere of this 911 money that goes to Albany, and we don't know where it goes, what it's spent on. So basically, this resolution is asking that the money that goes to 911 stays with 911.
Move that and put that in a resolution form for full board.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Need the
Second,
money.
Jean,
I'll second.
all in favor? Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
oh,
do.
3,
You do
okay,
three.
good. All right, now the next one is, with regard to, raising the age of
Cora,
criminal.
sorry.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry,
I
Kitty?
know that you just passed it, and I know that I'm not on this committee,
That's okay,
okay, but, when you're talking about this 911 monies,
yeah.
you're asking that all the monies go back to 911, and that makes sense. Where was it going before?
They keeping it there?
Before,
Well,
it was
It was going into a general fund.
Right.
the big slush fund.
State
State general.
general fund.
That's correct.
Instead of ours.
It was going to the state. There was a piece of it going towards the state police, because they were the original answers of the early version of 911. They don't do any of that today, but they're still continuing to get millions of dollars out of that 911 money. And we want that to come back to the counties, the ones that are doing the service today. And there are some cities too, it's not just the counties. But we want that money all to come back to us, not to be divided up and put in the general fund, to be paying all kinds of other expenses.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, but you know, it's interesting, and how, quote me if I'm wrong, didn't they tell us up in Delaware County that the 911 is totally state troopers, it's not COs, so that's why originally that took place. That money, that county only has, yep.
They're the only county left.
Still is
Yeah,
dispatch,
see?
state police.
State police dispatch, right,
But
that's
it's,
how that,
911 in Delaware County
Mhm.
is Delaware counties, but it's located in the state police zone headquarters
sorry.
in
Okay.
Sydney.
According to them, state troopers are.
now there's state troopers,
Answer the
that's,
phones and dispatch.
I'm just,
The
That's what they
troopers
told us.
and the, okay, but
That's what
I'm,
they
look,
told
I'm
us,
working
yeah.
with these people
yeah,
all the
ask him, 'cause
time.
he told us, I was shocked,
That's what he told us.
he was shocked,
The,
yeah.
the answer is that they had state police employees, dispatchers, who answer their 911 phones and answer the state police phones. They did that in a couple locations, okay? So how they're getting reimbursed or how the state is working back and forth with Delaware County, I'm not sure, but there's not,
We were
Delaware
surprised,
County
yeah.
doesn't have 911 dispatchers. Alex, am I
Right.
correct?
That's what they're saying.
Right.
They don't
That's
have a
what they were
staff.
saying.
They have an Alex up
Correct.
there who keeps
That is
track of it,
correct.
but he's gotta go to a state police sergeant
That is correct.
to make a complaint or get protocol changed.
Cindy, you're next.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanna kind of make a point, because, if the surcharge was originally intended to fund 911, and that was a state, promise or projection, and then here we are down the line and the state uses it for other things, and the state does make projections, there's no agreements in place anywhere that the original intent stays the original intent? Or is that just a floating projection somewhere that 911 surcharge money is gonna go for 911, and here we are down the line and we're gonna spend it for something else? You know what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say?
I see.
Cause this happened with the lottery, it may happen with the casino. You know, the state makes projections, and without the county having anything to say, hey, this 911 money should have stayed with 911. So is that typical? Is that what we see?
My understanding,
How many people are gonna answer the question?
my understanding of what happened was that they had a program called the Enhanced 911, right? The Enhanced Wireless 911, and that was the an intent. Then that amount of money was cut every year as the Albany debt kept rising, the cost kept coming down. But the money's still being collected, whether it's being paid for the debt service, or whether it's going to NYSERDA, or whether it's going to, pay for part of Dick's salary, okay. But now there's this thing called the next gen 911, right? The next iteration. And that's what they're trying to say, we need to have this money put back because we've now shifted all of the costs to the county and then we can only compete for some of that money back.
So if there was an agreement in place that the state operated that way, Sullivan County may have received much more than $38,000, which was the original intent, the way they promised and projected, am I right?
I don't know, I
There is
wasn't
no
around.
agreement, there's
There's no written
legislation.
agreement.
I mean, the state
I
passes their own
understand that, but what I'm
legislation.
saying is, when Sullivan County gets the short end of the stick again, are we gonna get the short end of the stick again for other projections that the state made, these floating estimates?
That's
Is
kind of the
there-
way they.
That's my projection.
Yeah, that's my projection, exactly.
Well, that's
And
all of our
This is typical of
frustrations,
what
I mean,
happens.
it's-
So just that
That's
I'm
what
on
we're trying to
record
fight
saying
for.
that this is typical of what happens. So Sullivan County really needs to be in the mix and say, this is intended, the state projected this, and $38,000 is not acceptable. But
100%
without
right.
any kind of forethought on our part of saying, we're not gonna go there unless we have something in writing that we can show you in 5 years.
Well,
That kind of sounded like my speech in Saratoga, didn't it?
it certainly did. Jean represented Sullivan County very well in front of the gaming commissioner. But I will say that in terms of who Sullivan County does have, he's a tireless fighter, and his name is John Merklinger, and he is the NISAC representative for 911 from Monroe County. And I think if people like Ken Walter take up the flag and have a campaign and literally bombard the Albany folks with the fact that, counties like Sullivan County really need this kind of relief. It's just not feasible to keep on going the way that it's been going. So can I move us now on to the next resolution? This is a very controversial resolution, and it's calling on Governor Cuomo to fully fund any proposal to raise the age of criminal responsibility in New York. The reason why I put this on, given the fact that there's a lot of pros and cons, we did pass a resolution in 2012 to oppose the raising the age. I'm happy to pass that resolution that we passed before, but the reason that I've asked for it to come back on is that there's two things happening on the federal level with regards to the PREA and the age and the 18-year-olds being apart. Do you mind just addressing that for a second, Hal?
Yeah, under the PREA regulations, which I don't know if they will ever be able to enforce because the federal government can't even enforce it upon themselves.
Well, we're in a
But
partial
the plan is 16 and 17-year-olds would have to be separated from 18-year-olds, and 18-year-olds would have to be separated from everybody. So you're actually putting another classification system.
And
You need a bigger jail.
PREA is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. The federal government did a study across the country, and they tried to identify at-risk groups in the prison population, and this is what they came up with.
So, for real practical purposes, what would that mean if you were trying to do that in the county jail as it stands right now?
You're gonna board out more.
So, and then also, Michelle said we got a phone call from the DA's office to stick with the resolution that we passed last year. And Colleen, you're here to also talk about that resolution we passed last year and our response to this resolution. We would either just reintroduce our own resolution or just not even put the NISAC resolution forward. Depends on how strongly everybody feels about it.
Well, the issue with the resolution last year, there was a bill and under the Senate or the Assembly, and then there was a proposal last year by Chief Judge Littman to raise the age. The problem with those two bills from the social services end, where they were looking at placing these 16 and 17-year-olds potentially in the custody of the local district, which would involve the expenses that we would have for that. These new bills that that are contained in this resolution have changed that somewhat. Placement would be placement with the local correctional facility,
It should be how.
which would be how. And the reason for opposing, I don't mean to interrupt you,
That's
last year
okay.
was because there was no mechanism for funding
Right.
local districts. It was more of an unfunded mandate. They've included some, it looks like, some language in these bills that would involve funding for the probation department, because any diversion that is going to be done for this population is going to be done by the probation department. So social services would, in some regard, be out of it now as far as those placements.
All it
Which
does
our
is
concern.
shift the responsibility onto some other area. So I'm assuming that because these bills died, right, otherwise it would have happened.
Yeah,
So,
they haven't gone anywhere.
Is this one better, Corey, say better written, the one that you?
No,
Oh.
I just wanted to make sure that
Oh.
if we were gonna oppose it, either on the same grounds that the last one was opposed, or on the overcrowding of the jails grounds, whatever, that we have our fair say, and say we oppose on the basis of, we don't have the money and we don't have the space.
That's basically the third, be it further resolved from the end.
Okay.
Cost-neutral to counties, provides all county departments, including probation departments, with the funding necessary to provide services to this population, and ensures a smooth transition to a new program for all involved. In other words, the state would pay for everything and wouldn't cost us anything.
Well, that gets back to
Good luck.
Cindy's point.
Good luck.
Well, what's the difference? It costs us in the long run, we paid it state.
Okay, so all in favor of this resolution?
I didn't get a
Oh,
motion.
sorry.
So which,
I didn't
this
get-
one, Cora,
Yeah.
or the one, okay, the one you hit,
There's
okay.
a question.
Oh, sorry, Alan.
Alan,
Yeah, I
second.
mean, nowhere in this
No, he's
whereas,
asking a question.
unless I'm missing it, it talks about providing services, funding and support services, but I don't see where support services is defined, even what that entails. Very gray, it's a very gray area.
You want us to be more specific, Alan, is that what you're saying? It's, cause it doesn't lay
well,
out.
I think someone, it'd be nice to know what, that needs to be defined somewhere, I would think. I mean, it could be very expensive, very elaborate. Theoretically, it could be beneficial, it may be superficial. So, I just, it seems very open-ended.
So basically, what we're saying is we do not want to pass this resolution. That's the,
Well, what this resolution is doing,
it's basically
Title.
allowing for the age to be changed, provided that the service is required in order for that to
paid for
happen.
by the state.
Right.
Yeah.
But we don't know
So,
what those services are, okay.
so basically what we're saying is that we are not, if I'm reading everybody's tone, we're not in favor of this resolution.
My concern with the resolution as it's worded, on one hand, it's supporting the change in the policy, not really understanding what those changes fully mean, but so in one way, it's embracing the policy without any commitment up front from the state that they're gonna fund it. It's kind of asking the state to fund it, but
Okay, what I'm hearing though, you're next, is that neither Hal nor Colleen want this to change. We wanna keep the age as it is. Keep the status quo.
The way it is.
Kitty?
that we're here.
So, what I'm trying to understand is if this resolution, the state resolution allowing it to be unfunded, then they would encourage the 16-year-olds to be separated from the 17 and 18-year-olds so that there'd be two teenage groups in two separate places. And if we oppose the resolution, we wanna keep all the teenagers in one group.
Well, I don't think that's what that says. This,
I'm
your,
trying
your
to get a
pre,
handle
your
on
PREA,
it.
your PREA Act, your federal law that's been enacted is totally separate from this. No matter what happens with this, when PREA comes down, you're still gonna have to keep your 16, 17-year-olds separated from everybody. And then your 18-year-olds are gonna have their own little section. And what's important to note is, it's not like I can just house them in a unit next door. There must be sight and sound separation, so they can't
Okay,
communicate.
So we wanna keep 16 and 17-year-olds in one group, can't see anybody else. We keep the 18-year-olds in another group, can't see anybody else. And we don't, not only do we not have the space, but we don't have the money, and the state's not going to pay for anything.
You got it in a nutshell.
But that's not this resolution, that's just what PREA is.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is that we table this resolution after all this conversation, because I know that we're like way over time. People who want to find out more about what the Senate and Assembly bills actually contain are free to do so. And then we keep on working with the situation the way it is right now, not asking them to change any public policy. Okay, so on to the next, right? We're not doing anything with this, we're tabling it. And basically, this last resolution is, kind of sums up what Cindy was saying about the fact that all these rules and regulations come down and there's no way of funding them. And so we're saying, if you want to make the laws, you got to pay your way. Thanks, Colleen. Okay, so do we want a motion on this one?
I'll move it.
Okay, second?
No, second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Was it,
Okay,
I just put that previous one, there's a motion, but there's no second, so I just put failed lack of second, so it just.
yep, it's
For
not,
all
it's not.
intents and purposes, it's tabled.
All right, so then, we have real resolutions now, if I can call them that. This is asking for an amendment to Resolution 151 that was done in '02 and '01 regarding compensation for court-appointed language interpreter services. And Josh, if you don't mind just saying the background of what took place and brought this resolution forward. We also have copies of that previous resolution here, if anybody wants to see the ones that were passed. Oh, no, that's the wrong one, sorry, my mistake. But go ahead and just give us
There's
the
a
background.
daily or hourly rate for the interpreters for these. This would be your indigent defense population if they need interpretation services in conjunction with legal aid or conflict legal aid. So we had a bill recently for, I think, an interpretation of Russian that we were unable to pay, or I didn't have authority to authorize, and it was justified costs for the amount of hours that they had to do. So this would pretty much increase some of the hourly rates across the board, and also uncap some of give it a little bit more ability to pay some of these bills without having a strict cap on them.
For a particular case involved the justice court in Monticello. They had to have a Russian interpreter. The nearest one they could obtain was from the Bronx. She came up, and when she submitted her bill, the only thing technically under our current resolution, and Angela caught this in audit, was the 2 hours she spent in court at $15 an hour. She had traveled all the way from the Bronx and back and gave us a affordable bill, which was appropriate, but because of the distance she had to travel, there's no interpreter in that language that was closer by. So we're holding up her invoice at the present time and not paying it until this resolution goes through, we can authorize payment of it on a case-by-case basis where it's not an interpreter that you have nearby. You know, some of the languages, they're nearby interpreters, but we get, every once in a while, we get Korean or Russian or something else where we have to go way outside of the county to find an appropriate interpreter. And if you don't pay for it in the portal, they're not gonna come. And we have to supply the interpreter for the local court.
So I think there's that happen?
Not very often.
Not often, I think, it depends on the year, but you're anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500.
Okay, so we
for a
didn't
full
move this
year.
for discussion, hang on.
I'll move it.
Move it, second, thank you. So we're gonna keep on the discussion before we call, a vote. Any more discussion? Now that we called for the discussion, all right, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next resolution.
2014
Okay,
stuff.
I make a motion, anybody?
I'll move
Motion,
it. I'll move
okay,
it.
I'll second to approve the, and Cora, to approve the 2014 Stop DWI plan and authorize the county manager to sign all agreements for the plan. Do you have anything you want to, talk about regarding the DWI
Yeah,
plan?
it's all flow-through money, it's all fine money, it's not taxpayer money. We administer the program, we divide the funds up, I divide them as the coordinator. We assist the probation department with some expense, we assist the DA's office. We also, for SCAT, Up in Liberty, the Joe Todoro's program. So it works out well for us, plus the local police agencies get money for DWI enforcement, as well as BOCES and the Recovery Center for treatment and education.
I
We've been
have a
doing that.
question.
Go ahead.
The 12,000, where does that come from?
That's coming from the victim impact panel that you sat with me 2 weeks ago.
So they pay when they come in?
Yes, they pay
And that's the-
$50 a head to come in. We're averaging 60 to 80 people for that.
The other part is like
It's
when
up
you
to
pay
50.
on
It's
your
up to
ticket
50,
or
yes.
to the court, you have to
Oh,
pay
We
a
have law
fine.
enforcement,
That's this,
we
this
have
is the victim.
probation,
Yeah, I know.
excuse me,
Been there, done that.
that's
So-
right, Gene
Like you
was
could
one
have
of
a
our
$1,000 fine.
students.
And have to get out.
And Josh has the details on where the other money's coming from. Could
Yes.
you just repeat that?
Yep.
Josh?
Well, that's more whatever the fine ends up being through the court system that they have to pay for their ticket, basically, that's the balance, the 250,000.
Yeah, there's certain monies from every DWI conviction that the money has to be given to the state DWI program, of which is divided up into the counties, and we're awarded that money for the program.
Okay, so I'm gonna call the question. All in favor, any opposed? Thank you, Annie. Last resolution is to, two more. They're pretty much the same. Can we take them as can we move them as a block?
I'll motion to move them as block.
Thank you, second.
I'll second.
Jean, do we need any explanation on it?
Who's the secretary?
If we say no, then that's bye-bye Dick.
Well,
Well, you get money for me from DWI to run that program, you get money here from the state.
There's a part of
who-
it.
Yeah.
who's your part-timer? I'm just curious.
Well, we use Marilyn Bastone to do my payroll and
Okay.
and pay the bills, but
That's
when
fine.
you say part-time, that's about as part-time as you can
Well, that's what it says. I'm
get. But she's
asking.
great, yes.
I just wanted to add that when we went to Delaware County and I counted the number of people that do Dick's job there,
Yeah, don't tell them that. Never mind.
Very good.
all right. Reports,
Who's
Alec, Dick, sorry,
Did we take a vote on these?
no. All in
I
favor?
want to do that.
Thank you, Gene.
Woo! Our parliamentarian. Okay, 4-0. So now, can you edit that part out? Who's gonna go first, Dick or Alex?
I'm going first.
Okay.
Last month, since we last met, I've had meetings with the new State Emergency Management Director for our area, Gary Tuttle. The State Emergency Management's been reorganized by the Governor's Office. There are now 10 different divisions. They're the same borders that the state police troops have. So here in Troop F, we have a new director. Gary came down from Albany. He's visited with me, took him out to the ELC. Tomorrow I meet with him. And a new state police lieutenant who's been assigned to us. Sergeant, I won't say his name right, so please forgive
I
me.
thought you said he was a lieutenant.
He's a lieutenant.
You said
He
sergeant.
was a sergeant. See, the trouble is I knew him as a sergeant. His name is Flakatulis.
Oh,
He
okay.
was down in Newburgh, and
Yeah.
he's a super guy, but he's gonna be working with us from the OEM side, and there's more changes to come. We've had our meeting with the Hazmat Consortium, which is Ulster, Sullivan, Orange, and Rockland, about our 2012, 2013 grants. The best news of all this is, and you did approve the grants, is that Rockland County's doing all the administration. I think that's one of the best things that could ever happen, and I hope Gordon Wren lives forever. He's the me of Rockland County, so there's no paperwork.
He's the Commissioner of Public Safety?
Yes. Yep. They call him Director of Emergency Services, but it's the same thing. I recently was invited to a meeting over with the Job Corps. I really have not had much time or contact with those folks. They're going through a reorganization, and they wanted to talk about site security. Met with state police. I know the sheriff's office has been there a number of times with some incidents, but I think that's well under control, and it's good. I don't know how the sequester is holding out for those guys. That's another story. We also, on September 18th, had a meeting of all our police chiefs in the county, all the different agencies. We talked about some changes out at 911 on protocol. We did have a long session about DWI arrests and how they do their sobriety work, and also how they have to be working with us also on the OEM side, emergency management, if we have an incident. Fire districts met September 25th. It was at that meeting at which time David Bodenstein, who's an insurance salesperson, owns an agency over in Jeffersonville. He did a spectacular job trying to explain to the commissioners how, when we have personal injury at a fire incident, how those bills are processed and they get paid. Unfortunately, there's a lot of commissioners, fire commissioners, who run around and say, well, the county pays the bills. We don't pay the bills. We administer the program. And through Monica's folks, Kathy, at the other end, they do a super job, and they're basically working for two clients. They're working for the firefighter volunteers who get injured to make sure their bills get paid, and they also work for the towns because they're representing the towns in the negotiations of those bills with the various carriers. So hopefully David did a great job and gave a lot of accolades, of course, to our staff down below. We had a super time at a week ago last Saturday at the county parade in Narrowsburg. I know most of you were able to make it, and we had a great day, and hopefully next year we'll have another good day here in Monticello, because that's where the next parade is in September. We've also had an opportunity to work on grants. Cora has been spending hours, different places, different meetings, and I've done the same thing, so hopefully we can keep moving with that. And then last but not least, I did have the occasion, it's not a joyful occasion, but it was very respectful, that this Tuesday was up in Albany for the State Fallen Firefighters Memorial, which was at 11 o'clock. There's over 2,000 names on the wall up there of firefighters who have died in the line of duty.
Wow.
Okay, we have a service here every year for all our departed firefighters in Sullivan County, but I'm very happy to say there's only 5 names out of that 2,000 in Albany that are from Sullivan County. George Davidson III was the most recent. Jim Duretsky, if most of you knew him. A gentleman named Harry Shapiro, who was a fire police member, got killed.
Run over on Hill
17, right. He was killed, and there was also Mr. Murray, a firefighter Murray from the Hurleyville Fire Department, 1984. So that's kind of good news. And remembering, we got 1,500 firefighters, volunteers in our county. We got about 350 EMS folks. And you've got your law enforcement, which is somewhere around 250 or so. They're out there every day for us, and we really don't want to have their name in a memorial, that's for sure. So that's basically it.
Thanks, that's very comprehensive. Alex, how are you doing?
Well, we're doing well. 911 is running smoothly, and I've just been working on some of the regional communication grant projects, and also some of the obviously our grant initiatives. So that's moving along. That's my report.
Yes, just as a one-sentence comment, I went to Poughkeepsie yesterday and participated in the New York State Department of Homeland Security grant training workshop. And there was a panel discussion from people in Westchester, Putnam, Rockland, and Greene counties that talked about how important the grant funding was in the aftermath, during and after Superstorm Sandy. How so many different counties relied on the equipment that had been grant funded, the personnel that had been grant funded, and I think that they put this huge sign meaning no extensions, one of those Ghostbusters 0 with a mark through it, because the feds in their, even with the sequester and the partial shutdown, are still making everyone hold to the 24-month period in which grants are no longer being extended. It's coming from the feds down to the states, and then it's being pushed to the counties. So I just want to reiterate how much work is done based on grant funding. And the EOC center that you had the command center for Hurricane Sandy was all grant funded, and even down to the dry ice that was distributed, a lot of that came from grant funding. So we really are incredibly dependent on that. Just before Jeff, before you do your report, I'm just going to pass out this next Stepping Up to Safety Wednesday, October 30th. I'll pass it around. We had a good turnout last month. We were going to wait and have the next meeting in 2 months, but they wanted to have it in 1 month, and it's basically 8 people that wanted to start new neighborhood watches in their area. Jeff, you want to go ahead?
About 3 weeks ago, probation went through an NCIC audit in reference to the department's ability to run criminal histories. Passed it with flying colors, no issues. Right now, just juggling around a couple of budget items. We've had a couple of unexpected expenses concerning the probation vehicles and also drug testing. We're using a lot more kits than we've used previously, basically just because there's a lot more prescription drug abuse that didn't exist a few years ago. And 5-10 years ago, we really didn't have too much in the way of heroin use by probationers, and that's changed quite a bit. That's it.
Okay. So we will have a special jail and probation public meeting in November. We don't know the time or the date, but we'll work that out. If we can hold Greg Tavermina's report until he's here next time. We don't.
Are there any more of those? I didn't get one.
I didn't get
one.
And we don't have the sheriff's department here, and
I
we.
represent the sheriff.
Oh, thank you, Hal.
The sheriff and undersheriff are out at a countywide school emergency drill. That's why they're not here.
The evacuation
just-
drill?
Yes,
Eldred's doing that.
they're all
Oh, they're all?
countywide.
Everybody go.
Oh,
Just a couple of quick things, our 90 days are done next Friday. So, yep, so now we're down numbers again. I'm sure you all heard we had an Eldred bank robbery. A couple of our detectives did an excellent job. They found a subject walking down the road who just seemed out of place. They questioned him. He was not involved, but he did know who did it, so it led to a quick capture. And recently, we just took down a 300-plant grow house in Mongat Valley. There were 2 gentlemen from Manhattan who were renting the house, and that's it.
And maybe they can do a special report on what Jeff was seeing about the spike in hard drugs, heroin. Because I know.
Heroin is your main driver in the county right now.
All right, so we'll have that special meeting next month, and it's now time for public comment.
Before that, please, point of information for me. Are we gonna get a report on the trip to the Delaware County Jail?
I thought that was Kathy's gig.
Oh, I'm gonna have, a lengthy discussion at the DPW meeting next month about the jail cost, the transportation cost, and the jail tour, yeah. I had to have the solid waste user fee, discussion this month because that we have to vote on, so that's gonna be an ongoing discussion.
The other
absolutely.
alternative is
Yes.
that we have it in the special meeting.
Either way, I'd like to get a report.
You organized it,
Yeah,
so
fine.
I'm not gonna write a report
You
based
could've
on
you could've
somebody
come on the
else's.
trip.
Well, he was working, okay,
No,
public
that's not the
comment.
point.
I'm sorry, Jean, I'm not gonna step over somebody else's toes. I
That's
didn't
fine.
organize the trip. We can have a
will have
It
a
special
wasn't
meeting.
working, that's not the point.
We will have
Oh,
a
okay.
discussion about the jail, Delaware jail tour next month. We're gonna be touring a lot of jails, so we get the opportunity.
Well, I find it a waste of time and money. Engineers design them, construction people build them, the DPW and the Sheriff's Department run them.
And the legislators vote on them.
I understand that. We
And I
vote
thought
on
it
the
was-
money end of it, we don't do the building.
I think it's very important that Mike was looking at that, my colleagues saw what the jail looked like and how they're built, and very informative.
I don't wanna end on this note. Basically, if we have a separate meeting and we just talk about the jail and give it its due, I think then that would cover it, whether you wanna do it in DPW or in public
We'll
safety.
discuss it.
Can we have it as a joint, meeting? So now, public comment, Ken
Ron,
and Tom.
To give you an idea on a 911 surcharge and what it amounts to, by census, we have around 75,000 people in this county. If you use 3 as the average family size, you're talking 25,000 homes. Or if you use 4, you're talking 18,000 homes. At $1 a month, which is really less than $1.30, you're talking 25,000. It's at least a $300,000 bill a year that's going out of the county to go to 911, if not more. So that's something you should keep in the back of your mind of what this is adding up to and what we're not getting back.
Alrighty, and Tom, public comment?
Yeah, I just previously
I'm not good at reading lips.
expressed some support for giving the sheriffs back the building that was being done for them back previously, and
Are you talking about the Sullivan Arc building
yeah,
at the Apollo?
sorry. Yeah, and I felt, at the time, I feel that it's one thing that is affordable, that can be done. I realize I've been against the jail, which is 80 million, that's 600,000. I was just wondering, heard what Ira Steingart said at the last month's meeting, that there was a verbal agreement. I think there was a verbal agreement with the Sheriff's Department before that. I don't know why it was taken away from, I know that the cost was a consideration, but I really think that it should be considered, that the county still owns the building. There's just been handshakes. If Butch Resnick is willing to renegotiate, that it should be considered to give it back to the Sheriff's Department. I think that is something the county can, even though it's a little bit expensive, can possibly afford to do. And I was just wondering what the board, if there's any ongoing discussion about that.
My understanding is that it is being done, talked about in DPW, right? I mean, in terms of construction costs. So this building itself, so then, it's kind of being kicked around. It's not being addressed directly, is it?
I
Scott?
haven't heard that it has.
It's not, go ahead.
The building is part of
Isn't the record?
the deal for the Apollo Mall with Butch Resnick. It is it is in the letter of intent, it is included in that piece. He has now stated, and has all along actually, that he does need the building, he does need the access. We are actually talking, and we were talking with the sheriff and with Hal, trying to figure out a way to find an interim place for them. But because the jail issue is an ongoing issue, we don't, it doesn't make a lot of sense to put a lot of money into a building on a temporary basis. So we're having discussions, it's not being discussed, but.
Yeah, no,
But
I
that building
noticed
is
that
definitely
Victor wrote
part of
that
the
Butch was
LOI.
willing to reopen the negotiation, and I just wondered if that was a consideration, because, being that there was no money to change hands. I know a lot of times, the way I look at it, deals are made when there's a little bit of money, put up, so, it was promising, so I was wondering if that was.
Okay.
No, there's been a letter of intent signed, and as soon as all the technical issues with the village are finished, then we will go forward with an agreement.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn.
Current bar.
Oh, sorry, Eileen.
I just want to thank the legislators here for looking at the pay increase of your interpreters for the local justice court. I think it has been long overdue, and I do really appreciate it. So again, thank you.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Kathy,
Second.
Jean.
Thank you all.